Before the cold pale dawn of Paris in 1832, the teenage mathematical genius Évariste Galois wrote frantically beneath the faint flickering glow of a solitary candle. He was not composing sentimental farewell love letters but redefining the boundary of human wisdom and rational thought. Tonight we walk into the brief, resolute, meteoric life of this extraordinary young mathematical prodigy, finding inner tranquility amid the profound mysterious logic of group theory and the merciless, crushing pressure of his turbulent era. If you were left with only the final few hours of your life, what precious legacy would you choose to leave behind? Évariste Galois chose to converse with the divine order of the universe upon rough scribbled sheets of draft paper. He was a passionate radical revolutionary and also a lonely outsider, rejected twice by the rigid conservative academic establishment. Follow the low soothing tone of quiet narration, gaze upon the blazing fire and deep hidden loneliness dwelling within this young soul, and feel the soft gentle companionship of the night amid the irreversible destined flow of fate. The age of 20 should mark the most brilliant, promising starting point of a whole lifetime, yet for Évariste Galois it became the final end, where he had to stand face to face with loaded gun and mortal duel. What he left to the world was not merely groundbreaking theories that reshaped the entire history of mathematics, but also an ultimate martyrdom dedicated purely to the pursuit of truth. This is far more than a simple, retrospective look back into forgotten history. It is a late night meditation on the true meaning and value of life itself. May this gentle, unhurried tale that lingers softly in your mind accompany you into a long, peaceful dream, untouched by all worldly noise and trivial unrest. Imagine the bitter, piercing cold late night of Paris in 1832, the howling wind wailing mournfully through narrow, winding alleyways. Outside the window an old oil lamp flickers dimly, casting pale, wavering light upon the young boy's exhausted, slightly pale face, worn out by endless mental toil. This is Évariste Galois holding a trembling quill pen, scribbling dense lines of mathematical symbols across blank sheets of paper. On the edge of his rough notebook he wrote down a desperate, heartfelt line: I have no time tonight. Accompanied by the soft dancing light of the burning hearth, we follow this gentle, unhurried tale and walk deep into the genuine life hidden behind his legendary genius. Only a few short hours remained before he would put on his coat, walk toward a desolate wasteland on the outskirts of the city, and step into a duel doomed almost certainly to end in his death at merely 20 years old. He had already seen through the tangled fog of advanced mathematics that had puzzled brilliant human minds for thousands of years, yet cruel irony lingered. He could solve the most complex algebraic equations with flawless precision, yet he could never untangle the deep-rooted misunderstanding and prejudice the world of his time held against him. When the first ray of morning sunlight cut through the heavy gloomy haze hanging over Paris, the life of this unparalleled genius began its final countdown, while those messy scribbled notes he left behind would shake the very foundation of the global mathematical community half a century later. It was the final night before the fateful duel. Time no longer flowed like calm, steady water, but spilled down wildly like rushing sand, slipping endlessly through a narrow funnel. Évariste Galois felt no fear toward approaching death. What terrified him most was the thought that the profound truths locked deep inside his mind would be buried forever alongside his mortal body. He sorted and organized his groundbreaking ideas on group theory with frantic urgency, a transcendent vision far ahead of his era, capturing the divine hidden logic of mathematical symmetry. With every line of proof he wrote, he could visualize the elegant, graceful dance of symmetrical transformations unfolding in his inner consciousness. Tragically, this was not the first time he had attempted to present this precious gift to the academic world. At the age of 17 he mailed his formal research paper to the great mathematician Cauchy, only for the revered academic authority to misplace and lose the manuscript amid piles of old documents. Later he sent another version to Fourier, yet Fourier passed away suddenly before ever reading the work, and the precious paper vanished once more without a trace. He seemed a pioneer cursed by cruel fate, holding a blazing torch of enlightenment, yet trapped alone inside an empty, silent auditorium with no audience worthy of listening. On this desperate final night he abandoned all hope of gaining recognition from powerful, noble scholars, placing all his lifelong research and unspoken thoughts into the hands of his loyal, closest friend Chevalier. What he drew upon those draft pages was far more than cold mathematical formulas. It was the final desperate mark he left upon this absurd, indifferent world. Why did a pure mathematical genius become entangled in a deadly duel with no chance of survival? The answer lies hidden within the chaotic, restless Paris of the 1830s, a time woven from thick smoke street barricades and unyielding republican ideals. Évariste Galois was never a sheltered, bookish nerd confined only to dusty textbooks. Flowing within his veins burned a fiery anger far more passionate and intense than any algebraic symbol his father, a respected liberal-minded mayor, ended his own life after enduring vicious slander and malicious defamation from religious conservatives and royalist supporters. This devastating tragedy planted an indelible hatred for the old rigid regime deep within the heart of the 17-year-old Galois. He rushed out of the quiet campus, donned the uniform of the National Guard, and shouted loud Republican slogans amid crowded city streets. He was once arrested for raising A dagger toward the king at a public banquet, standing tall and proud in court, declaring boldly that true freedom would never descend upon the world without more spilled blood and brave sacrifice. His radical, uncompromising stance branded him a complete outcast within mainstream academic circles. Professors dismissed him as a manic, irrational madman. Even the official obituary published after his death remembered him only as a troublesome political prisoner. Mathematics itself ought to belong to quiet solitude and calm contemplation, yet Galois' profound mathematical insights were born directly from the roaring collapse and turbulent upheaval of his chaotic era. Let us turn to discuss that fatal duel, a cruel deception wrapped in the false glamorous cloak of worldly honor. Historical records remain extremely vague regarding the exact cause of the conflict, said to involve a young woman named Stephanie. Yet in Galois' final farewell letter written to his closest friend, he stated clearly, "I have fallen victim to two patriots." One prevailing belief claims this was nothing less than a deliberate political assassination, royalist factions luring the impetuous, passionate young genius into a deadly trap with the help of a skilled marksman. Galois understood perfectly well his opponent's deadly shooting skill and knew his chances of walking away alive were slim and almost non-existent. Still, he chose to accept the challenge, not merely to defend his personal pride and dignity but as a final surrender to utter despair and quiet liberation. He once wrote in his private notes that his body no longer belonged to himself, it belonged to the bullet destined to end his life. This near martyr-like state of mind grew from years of relentless rejection by society, ignored research papers, endless academic contempt, and the complete shattering of his youthful ideals. On that quiet, lonely night, he no longer cared whether Stephanie returned his affection nor whether Republican dreams would be realized by the next morning. He simply stared quietly at the flickering candle flame, watching it slowly burn down until the cold, pale light of dawn seeped through the heavy curtains covering his window. Early morning arrived. Dew soaked the young man's boots upon the grassy meadow beside the Lagrange pond. Évariste Galois stood facing the cold muzzle of a heavy dueling pistol gleaming with icy metallic light. 25 measured steps separated life from death, a silent game between extraordinary genius and meaningless absurdity. The gunshot rang out sharp and echoing. The young man fell heavily into the dirt like a withered dead leaf, the bullet piercing deep into his abdomen. None of the so-called dual witnesses stepped forward to offer help. They scattered in panic, leaving him moaning in agony alone upon the desolate wilderness. It was a passing farmer who discovered his injured body and carried him to St. Louis Hospital. Lying weak upon the hospital bed, he looked upon his younger brother Alfred, who wept bitterly beside him, speaking calmly the timeless famous words, "Do not cry, I need all my courage to die at 20." For the next 24 hours he endured excruciating physical pain, yet his gaze remained fixed steadily upon empty space. In that quiet final moment he may have seen the mathematicians of the future trembling with awe and admiration before the profound, elegant symbols he had created. On the day of his funeral, 3,000 Republican supporters gathered at the Paris cemetery with police forces standing fully alert in heavy guard. Yet among this vast mourning procession almost no one understood that the young man lying inside the wooden coffin had already unraveled the age-old mystery of solving quintic equations. Those research manuscripts of Évariste Galois, rejected, forgotten, ridiculed and ignored during his lifetime, lay quietly tucked away inside his friend Chevalier's drawer. Chevalier never betrayed his dying trust, spending 14 long years traveling tirelessly seeking opportunities to let the academic world finally read those precious handwritten lines. It was not until 1846 that the great mathematician Liouville finally comprehended these far-sighted ideas ahead of their time. Liouville wrote in his diary that he had discovered an extraordinarily beautiful, complete theoretical system, even if parts of it appeared obscure and difficult to understand. From that moment onward, the name group theory officially illuminated the future development of physics, chemistry, and even cosmic cosmology. Galois traded his fleeting physical life of 20 short years for eternal pages of profound truth belonging to all human civilization. All the political struggles that once fueled his anger, the heartbroken sorrow of unfulfilled love, and the bitter contempt he endured from arrogant scholars faded away into empty nothingness. Only the timeless, symmetrical beauty of his mathematical theories remains shining quietly like fixed stars high in the vast sky of mathematics to this very day. The life of Évariste Galois resembles an extremely brief yet dazzling brilliant flash bursting across the vast universe. With extreme unyielding resolve he answered the profound question of life's hidden meaning. Raised at the beginning of our tale, a person may die before the darkest dawn, yet the bright light left behind by their soul will eventually penetrate the thick fog spanning half a century. Every time we gaze up at the starry night sky, or marvel at the orderly symmetrical beauty of nature, we pay silent unintentional tribute to this remarkable 20-year-old boy. The world never treated him with gentle kindness, yet upon those rough scribbled draft pages he gave back to the world one of the most perfect, profound answers imaginable. Tonight's story draws slowly to a close. Those mathematical symbols, youthful anger, and echoing gunshots of the duel have all faded far into the distance. What remains is the unique tranquility of the night and the peaceful calm you feel within your steady Breath. There is no need to ponder complex equations or tangled logical deduction. Simply remember that every soul that has ever lived earnestly and sincerely leaves behind an everlasting lingering echo. The hearth fire has faded to dim embers. May you find your own inner peace and serenity wandering within the quiet dreams of this extraordinary young genius. Good night, and may you drift into a gentle peaceful sleep.